In the previous video, we were talking about starting this forward stride, but we were also covering great detail the problem that we have of coming onto this heel and putting too much pressure on it and going backwards and talking about all of the different issues that are causing that to happen. And I also made the comment of the big problems that we have, people with the restrictive postures have, of starting and stopping any forward stride movement. In fact, for some people with moderate or more involvement, they will also have a problem with any movement they begin, in any movement they try to stop in any direction. And that is the most precarious time for the people with these movement problems due to a restrictive posture. Starting the movement and ending the movement. Those are the times when they're most likely to have an accident. And the reason is they don't know how to start it and they don't know how to stop it. The issues that we were talking about in the last video about coming on to this forward heel too quickly and with too much pressure and not supporting our weight on the ball of this foot and toes to be able to transition safely and smoothly onto this foot is that big issue of starting the movement. Now, it's not just all the issues I've talked about before and having the fear of having that pressure in the foot, which is, although very real for a lot of people. The other problem is the fear of starting the movement. It's the same fear of stopping the movement, not trusting yourself to be able to do either. That is the other huge component of pulling back away from moving. Because as I said in that last video, and you can duplicate this yourself very, very easily. Put yourself in this ready stance with the pressure on the ball area and toes of the foot that you're transferring the weight to. And then as soon as this knee lifts this foot, your body begins to move forward. And with natural ability, we don't have any fear of that. We just take it for granted. And there again, that's the automatic movement that just happens that we have no concept of or no thought about how we're doing it because our body has just set it up. We're set up where we transfer all of that pressure on the one foot, which is in the ball and toe areas of that one foot. And even though we're on that tiny, small island of our foundation down there, we're putting that pressure in there, and that pressure is pushing back. And then when this knee lifts this foot off the floor, we just go. We preset everything. And now it's taken off the brake by lifting that knee up. That's what people with the movement impairment, with these restrictive postures, fear. Why? It's because they don't know how to control it. They don't trust themselves. Once they get moving, they don't know what to do. Once they get moving, all this stuff happens because their body is not relaxed enough to be able to not do that. It's not relaxed enough just to be able to go with the flow and continue pushing this pressure one after the other as your body just keeps going. And you have this stiffened posture. That can't happen. It doesn't happen because all these changes that are going on up here, changing the pressure down there in our feet, there's no continuance of that movement. So then it becomes reactionary. And then it becomes overreaction. overcompensation. And there's a point to be made with all of this. And it holds up a good 75 or more percent of the time. When first stride is taken, the first movement in any direction is made, and it's not correct, all of this compensation and overreaction, if that person doesn't correct themselves by the fourth stride, they're going to fall. You can take that to the bank, watch them. That's another reason for keeping the stuff small, so the reactions aren't so exaggerated, so the pressure changes are smaller to give you time enough to adjust to the smaller mistakes, so that stuff doesn't happen, so you can learn how to relax. Because until you can relax this up here, this stuff is going to stay stiffer than it should. And that's especially with this fifth stance, this forward stride. Now it's this fear of your body starting to move, and you're not prepared. Maybe you are down here, but this is not prepared because it's, oh my God, I'm moving. I'm the wind in my face, or whatever. Because remember, these people, and I used to be one of them, we're coming from that point where every movement you want to make is thought out. Even though while we're making them, we have no clue what we're thinking about in controlling them. It's not. We're not thinking about how to control them. We're thinking about the problems we're going to have and how likely it's going to be that we're going to fall. We're not pre-planning the movement. So here, while you're focusing on all this other stuff to get it right, and there's a lot that you're going to be dealing with up here, and your body starts to move, the instant reaction from old learned behavior is stiffening, grinding. And that's part of the reason why the shoulders will start to come back as you're adding pressure to that very small area of the foot. Yes, it's a strength issue, it's a confidence issue, it's a smaller foundation issue, all of that stuff. But when you get more and more onto that one foot in just in the forward part, then a bit of shaking starts happening with a lot of people with these postures. They don't know how to keep that knee down to hold that pressure in there. And the fear, the shoulders come back, the forward movement is destroyed, and now it's either a non-movement. If they're lucky enough to keep the shoulders here, they just lift that foot and go nowhere. And typically it's not this high, it's not this high, it's just barely off the floor. But more than not, it's back here. And it's to the outside of that corner, because the shoulders are withdrawing and they're transferring body weight. With this problem, they're still using their shoulders a little bit to help them transfer the body weight down to this foot. So a combination of that is drifting back to the corner. So it's another reason why they fear trying to come on that one foot, just the forward part, and making this forward movement. So you have to understand all of the psychological problems that go into it, along with the physical problems. This is more complex for all those reasons. And it gets scarier because of all the psychological stuff. And if this is not realized, trying to get some of these people to do this, you're trying to force them into walking therapy when they haven't the capability to stand comfortably on 2 feet, much less stand on 1 foot, even for a second, and you want to try to get them to do walking therapy where they're coming, oh, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, put your foot in front of you and then just move your body onto it, which is garbage. We don't work that way naturally, except for certain limited circumstance. And as you're seeing, giving them that advice is the exact wrong thing to do. And while I'm on that soapbox, for those people advising these people with the problems to do that, they themselves are not doing what they think they're doing, what they're describing when they're describing that to them. They're doing something else. Why? One, they don't have the psychological problems. Two, they don't have the stiffening physical problems. And three, while they're doing it, they're not stiffening up or doing the things that we do with this. So they're relaxing into this. They go, oh yeah, just, heel, toe, relax that foot, feel like that toe, it's a boat, on the water, this and that. Until you can live in our shoes going through this, you really won't understand it. And of course, that applies to anything. But honestly, when you're working with people with these problems, to put yourself in their shoes, you have to do a lot of stiffening and hold it. Those of you that have been around people with these problems know that when they come up to something, they will not come up to it and stop. What they will do instead is they will start stopping way back here. And how are they stopping? Well, they're withdrawing away from it. Something is coming in my personal space. And without recognizing why, it's because they don't trust themselves to be able to stop. They don't want to be embarrassed by falling into something or somebody. So they're starting way back here. Their feet are getting a little bit wider apart, and now they're starting to come backwards. Notice it's the same thing. They try to go forward, and they're coming backwards to go forward. They're coming backward, and now to come out of that, they have to get their upper body to start giving them some forward momentum. And it's the same thing here. They'll do this. They'll start to go back. And if there's not somebody to catch them or this, they'll go through the exact same thing and hopefully catch themselves, or they'll throw themselves forward into it without an understanding how they did any of it. We have no clue what we just did or why we just did it, and we're embarrassed to no end. But this is upper body withdrawing up here, slowing down before they ever get there. This is leading them backward, and now this again starts that reaction and overreaction ceremony, dance, whatever you want to call it, all over again. And as I said, 4 strides. Well, not even 4 strides. 4 movements back and forth between their feet. If they don't catch this by their 4th stride, their overreaction, their over control puts them out of control, where it makes it very difficult, if not impossible, for them to control it, because they're getting further and further out on the pressures in their feet, or too far back, too far forward, and they just don't have the capability to compensate for it anymore. And down they go. So with all of this in mind, what do you do? How do you get over that? a couple different ways. One is you prepare yourself very well before you start the forward stride. And some of you should rightfully be saying, whoa, wait a minute. We can't wait to walk forward because we have to do that every day. So to not do that, that's kind of stupid. Yeah, you're right. So what I'm speaking of don't try it, is don't try these normal size strides. Instead, keep your stride small. Do more of a shuffling stride because you're using a flatter foot. Yes, as you're doing that, you're going to come forward towards the ball area of your feet, but it's not going to be much. And as you become more and more comfortable with that, we'll start to relax more, and that foot will start to flex. And that's the way you need to get through that until you have the ability to take a more natural stride. So it's baby steps. And for those of you with a significant problem, or even some with a moderate problem, you need to stay flat, 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 taking about a half of a shoe length stride each time. And many of you are going to complain, say, I can't do that. It looks silly. I feel silly. I feel this. Well, hey, are you stable? And are you able to relax more? Are you able to fall less? Well, yeah. Well, get used to it. Because once you do, you're going to start transferring body weight more completely. You're going to learn how to get off that inside pressure a little bit quicker. You're going to learn how to relax better into a flat foot, flat foot, flat foot. You're going to be practicing make that foot heavy, heavy, heavy. Instead of starting out trying to push all that pressure into that forward part of your foot, you're still using most all of each foot. And you're learning how to shift that weight enough to be able to bring that knee up. Straight up, straight up. You can practice this again by just walking in place. When you first start this way. When you're having a problem, when you're stiff, whatever, start with the basics. Warm yourself up like you do your car. And then gradually, and as you become more relaxed, you will start taking bigger strides. It's not a big deal. People out in public will look your way less if you are controlled doing this than you are up here. When you're doing that, you call attention to yourself. It's not that they're being all that nosy, at least not most of them. It's that something is out of normal and we're drawn to it. We look. It's not that they're making a character reference for you most of the time. Sometimes some people do, admittedly. And I was in your shoes as well. I remember the feeling. And most of that came from inside, of what you perceived other people were thinking or saying, whatever. But if you can keep yourself stable, even if it's smaller strides, you're going to draw less attention to yourself. Even from yourself, you're going to be able to relax more. And that's the big key. Smaller strides, smaller strides. I had my head down, my eyes down. And I said before, learn how to get your eyes up and look at the horizon or at the doorknob and light switch, that type of thing. Yes, eventually that's where you want to get it. But when you're this way, keeping those eyes down helps you keep those shoulders forward and keep that pressure a little bit forward in your feet. But it can also be detrimental because you can get down there too far and now you're tipping forward on the tips of your shoes and Those of you that have been this way, and I have, you're tipping forward on the balls and toes of both feet. And yes, you get stiff and you're up here and you can't move. You can't hardly catch yourself until you're in that forward fall. And then if you have enough ability, then you catch yourself. The rest of us back then kind of scuff our nose. Why can't you pick up one of your feet off the floor right here and do this? Some people can do that. People with natural ability can do that. But those people with the stiffened posture, the guarding, they get out here and they're falling forward. Both feet, you're pushing down with both feet in the ball and toes, trying to stop yourself from falling forward with these muscles back here in your calf. Both feet are pushing extra pressure down the floor, trying to stop you from falling forward by increasing the foundation down to the floor. It's a natural response. That's why, in this panic mode of falling forward, that's why you can't lift either foot off the floor. With natural ability, you're able to transfer pressure to just the one foot to be able to move the other foot to get out of it. But with these restrictive postures, both feet are pushed down, you're stiffened, you're locked into it, you can't move. Until you fall off of one or both of those, these legs, these feet are not going to move. That's why that tipping fall is the disaster it turns out to be. You have to try to prevent that the best you can, but you're not always going to be able to do that. And in fact, many times you will induce that during your walk, and not just when you're starting the walk. Typically, it's during the walk. And that happens because you scuff your feet. Now, with this, when you get lazy with these guarded, stiffened postures, what part of your foot scuffs? Have you ever stopped to feel it? Have you ever stopped to look at the person who's doing it? It's the bottom of the front area of your shoe. And that's because that is the lowest part of your foot during your stride. When you're walking forward, this knee comes forward to bring the foot forward. That foot, when it's coming up and through, it's the front part of the shoe that's going to scuff the floor when you haven't done a complete transfer of body weight, when you haven't kept this push going and the support of your body weight as this comes forward. This transfer of body weight has to be enough so this knee can come up high enough, bring that foot forward without it touching the floor. Now, if you have inside pressure on this foot you're transferring to, you're going to come down prematurely, and it's going to be typically on the ball area of that foot. Now, here you go. And when you scuff that area of your shoe on the floor, if it's a smooth, hard floor like this one, it can just glance right off it. Unless you have a lot of pressure coming down on it. But when it's something that is kind of a coarse material or anything with a good grip on it, you will stumble. You will hit that and boom, you go. Many of you have had the experience, many of you have said, in our sessions that I'm walking along and all of a sudden, bam, I'm forward on my nose. 1 second I'm okay, next second, bam, on my nose. It's just like this. 1 second I'm okay, and the next second, poof, I've fallen. It's because you've tripped yourself because you're not transferring this body weight enough to one foot to support yourself to allow this knee to lift this foot high enough to bring it where it needs to be on the floor. And the other part is you have the strength, but you're having a lazy day or you're tired or whatever, and you're just not doing it as efficiently. And this foot catches and over you go. And you get here. If you're not going very fast, you'll have time to catch it. If you add more of a brisk walk, off you go. So, scuffing your foot is not typically the problem of the foot that's scuffing. Typically, it's the other foot that's not supporting your body weight enough, that's not controlling your body through the movement, that's not supplying the adequate push and allowing this one to scuff. So what do you do with that? Well, you learn to push more pressure into the foot you're using, and you also work on getting this knee up just a little bit higher. Not a lot, just a little bit, so that foot can clear the floor. And this is especially true when you're outside or on a deeper carpet or walking across something. You have to bring that knee up higher, which means you have to have extra pressure down into the foot you're using for support to allow your knee to come up higher, however high it is. A problem with that is, you're here and you go, and you try to do it with bringing your shoulders back, and it's a very, very, very common. Even when there's a twig in the grass, a twig below the top of the grass. I've done this years ago. I've seen other people do it, a lot of them that I work with. Just thinking of having to lift that foot up a little bit to step over that twig that's under the top of the grass. Things go up here, all the old habits come back, and you're doing this stuff instead of just continuing on and just making the stride better, the transfer of body weight to one foot better. So the issue of this forward stride is dependent on how well you can trust your body on that one little area in the front of one foot at a time. How well you can trust it to transfer your body weight completely on it, and how much you can trust it to push you on to the next foot, to where the next foot is to be, where the body needs it to be to finish that stride. There again, that's the complexity of this forward stride movement. There's a lot to work on. There's a lot to get over. All of those issues, the psychological issues, the physical issues, all of those that you were dealing with back in the first, second, and third stride, and then more in the fourth, but especially in these first ones, all of those issues are now, bam, right back, because now I'm doing it on this little area of 1 foot. Instead of doing it on 2 feet, now I have to do it on just the forward part of 1 foot. Now that's about 25% of the surface area of both feet, but it's less than that when you consider the area, the surface area of your foundation. For example, out here, if I'm standing with this normal stance, let's say, well, let me bring that in just a little bit closer because I want to make it easy math on my part. Okay, here I am standing here. Now, there's about 1 shoe width between my feet right there. So let's say I'm standing on 3 feet, the surface area of 3 of my feet on the floor. So when I come over here and do this, I've just reduced my foundation surface area down to 1/3. I've taken 2/3 of it and said, be gone with you. I'm going to do it with just 33% of the area. Now, we want to take a forward stride. We're going to do it on just that part of the foot. We're going to do it on about 1/3 of 1 foot. So we've gone from 100% down to 33%, and now we've just cut that 33% down to 1/3 of that, which is 11%. Get the picture? It takes much, much better ability with everything we're talking about to trust that little part of your foot with everything to make it through those movements. 11%, give or take. If you're doing it with this flat foot, now you're still using 33, 33, 33, 33 instead of 11. Get the picture? Why do you want to walk with these baby steps? I'm using more foundation, which it gives me a better ability to keep myself balanced and in control and safe. Do the math. Look at the realism of it. Just because you could do it before doesn't mean you can do it now because of all these problems we have. But you've seen me up here making mistakes and then correcting them. Some days I'm up here, I'm doing really good. And other days, oh, looks like Doc has a little bit of an issue today. Yeah, that's right. So many of you can have that same life. It's not perfect, but it's so much better than what it was. But you have to do the work. I'm going to repeat that over and over again and drum it into your head because that's what's required. There are no shortcuts with this. If you have only a mild problem, it's not a shortcut that you can do less and improve quicker. You have better ability. You have fewer problems to overcome. But when you have a more moderate problem, significant problem, you have a lot of work to do. Don't fear the work. Look at it as your adventure. This is what I need to do to improve me. It's the one thing you can do for yourself that everybody has told you is impossible. It's not impossible. I've done it. I live it. Join me.